Yes, people, welcome back to another show. And yeah, it was not the best weekend of rugby for me. But at least there was some really good games. Like the Dragons beating Connor. Um, and yeah, so there's still lots to talk about, negative and positive. But yeah, um, joining me as always is the ever neutral and ever beloved uh, guy all the way from New Zealand, Hamish.
You forgot to add also therapist because this one's going to be a bit of a one that we talk through for what happened with the Bulls again. But interesting weekend, and also a little bit of information that we found out, which is the South African Derby's not taking place this weekend. Those games being delayed till 2026, so a little bit of a spell for the South African teams, but overall still some great head-to-heads taking place this weekend for the URC. Some pretty close derbies along the way. And yeah, good win for the Dragons. They managed to beat them
Yeah,
by about 20 points, which I don't think many people were anticipating.
yeah, no, that was a big shock, and to be honest, it probably could have been more. Um, but I think the Dragons just their legs, I think, gone a bit towards the end, but we'll get into that later. But let's start then with the elephant in the room. Um, the Bulls have now gone 5 games without a win, and the Sharks are back-to-back wins. Um, it's yeah, I don't know the way to start. It hurts. I think the Sharks one hurts a lot because of how bad the Sharks have been of late, and now they've changed their coach, and it's worked for them. For us, it hasn't worked. But yeah, let's start on the Sharks and talk about them, and then we'll get on to the Bulls.
Okay. Well, this is going to sound harsh, and I don't think there's any way to kind of beat around the bush for it. I think if the Sharks played like they did up against any, sorry to say, competent team in that game, they probably would have lost by quite a few points. They had handling error after handling error, and the Bulls were dominating at scrum time, which is one part of the Bulls game at the moment that doesn't seem to be the struggle. But the biggest problem is they're only turning it into 3 pointers, which is always going to be tough to beat a side like the Sharks, who, when they can find their rhythm, can score quite a few points. I think that, you know, no matter what the score is, as long as you win the South African Derby, normally the side that is the victor is pretty happy. There was a lot that the Sharks could have done better. There was also a ton that the Bulls could have done better. But the Sharks, they were able to win, which is the main thing, because now it was a scenario where both coaches really needed the victory. You could argue one of them needed it more than the other, but I'd say that for JP Peterson, that was the type of game that they thoroughly needed for the Sharks to kind of bring that little bit of confidence in front of the home crowd as well. That one could have been an ugly loss had they not been able to pull it off. But no, I think the Sharks deserve a lot of credit for the fact that they won ugly, but they still won in that
Mm.
match.
Yeah, um, and I think, like you said, the probably if the Sharks play like that, probably any other team beats them. But the what do you call it? They just hung in there, and that's really the only thing you can do is if you stay in the fight, right, and then they have enough quality to, if things click in the attack, they they can score tries, and that's what they did.
Yeah.
So now, congrats to the Sharks, and I thought, to be honest, I thought they defended well, in some cases. Um, so yeah, I think the only place they were lacking was probably the scrums. But other than that, it was pretty 50-50 on both ends.
Yep.
And in the end, they were a bit on the attack, and it showed by them. I mean, they scored 3 tries.
Yep. 3 in the end. And I do think that someone who deserves a huge amount of credit is Sia Kolisi, because it's always talked about, those guys for the Springboks who come back into the Sharks and whether or not their heart is in it. But you could see how much it meant to him scoring that early try for the Sharks, or at least an early one in terms of their score sheet in the match. Like, in terms of his last few games, he has looked the real deal for the Sharks, and everyone knows what he can do at Springbok level, but it's fantastic to see that is translating into these URC matches as well, because if you're a Sharks fan and you're seeing those guys going out there and putting their heart and soul into the game, like, you're more likely to buy a ticket. This game's sold out. There were a lot of empty seats for a sold out game, but I think that was because of people trying to resell tickets close to Christmas, make a few dollars along the way, but still a great crowd for the contest. And maybe the rugby at times didn't quite live up to the expectations, but at the end of the day, every once in a while when you have a derby, it's going to be a little bit scrappy. There's going to be moments where it's a bit stop-start, but, more fans than not would have left that game still happy enough because of the fact that the Sharks got the win.
And also, I think Khaleesi played the full 80 minutes almost, I want to say, which is like usually doesn't play the full 80 minutes. So that's a massive testament to him. So yeah, but it's an interesting one, really. So yeah, but then let's talk on the Bulls. I don't know, where do we start? Do we start with the defense? Do we start with the attack, or where do we start?
Well, if you want to start with the positives, their forwards look good. There were some good moments there for Gerhard Stennekamp, Johan Grobler, and Wilco Low. The problem is they can't kind of duplicate those 3 men and have them coming off the bench as well to try and assert that dominance throughout the whole 80 minutes. But yeah, it's just that question mark of whether or not they should have been starting or whether they should have gone with that impact off of the bench late. Now, winning those penalties was all well and good, but it was just the fact that they couldn't convert it into more points. But we also have to remember they had, I believe it was 2 disallowed tries, wasn't it, for the Bulls? So if either of those ones stuck, maybe that could have been the momentum swinger for them. But I do still think there were a few players for the Bulls that actually did play very well. It's just the fact that as a whole, the team just couldn't quite be as clinical as you'd normally see for the Bulls. And I don't know if that was tactical or whether that was just mindset, but yeah, something wasn't quite clicking.
Yeah, no, that's true. Don't know what was up with why we just kicked the 3 points, but yeah. The it's confusing to me in some respects. But like you said, the forwards done well. That's the main thing. That's one positive. And the only problem is we don't have forwards on the bench that can provide that same impact. So, and you can't be playing those guys for full 80. Just don't. But yeah.
So, as a Bulls supporter, where is your stance at the moment on Andre Pollard? Because, of course, he's the big signing that did return for that Bulls side. And the backline at times looked okay. Villy LaRue at times also was non-existent throughout that game up against the Sharks. So, do you think that Pollard, as great of a player as he is for the Springboks and as well as he was going for the Leicester Tigers, is he the guy that's going to be able to turn this side around in that number 10 jersey? Because we've seen Cade Volhutter, he's now out for a long extended period of time. We've seen glimpses of Keegan Johannes in that 10 jersey as well. But is Pollard, because of that kicking aspect, the perfect player to fill that role? Or do you think you needed more attacking 10 in this type of scenario?
I feel like if we can have a combination of the two, that'd be best. Because if you look at previous sides of Johan Ackerman, if he is the guy we're gonna stick now with, then he always had an more attacking 10. You look at Elton Yankees, was very attacking. I don't know who else they had in Japan, then, but I think you need Andre Pollard just for in the big games. Um, those penalty kicks will help you. That's what I think. But
Yeah.
yeah, I don't feel like we can totally blame him, Andre Pollard, because I don't feel like he did something wrong completely. I just think it was a lack of what do you call it? Uh, Lack of intensity almost from us, and we just seemed too tired towards the end. And we also made mistakes. Like every time we did knock on the ball, like every time we were on the attack, we knocked the ball on as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's another reason why I can't blame him, because he can only do so much with that little amount of time we have possession in attacking off. So I don't think he was one of the problems, but I would like to see him a bit more attacking. But yeah, I can't say that he is one of the problems there in the team. And I think that could be one aspect where we are so struggling. In some respects, I'm probably looking back at it and saying if we had Jake White and Andre Pollard working together, that probably would have been best in terms of styles.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. I don't think he is one of the problems in this team, Andre
Mm.
Pollard. Um, I think there are bigger concerns than Andre Pollard, in my
Yeah.
opinion. So,
The reason I've
uh,
been smiling a little bit throughout the last minute is because if Sasha's back from his injury, we're going to see Andre Pollard versus Sasha for that Stormers versus Bulls match in the number 10 jerseys, which is just, I mean, Rasi must be looking on to that game and just getting so excited about the prospect of those two going head to head because, you know, Sasha at the moment, he's the type of player who finds half a gap and he'll just run through it, create the attack himself, whereas Pollard's very good at feeding that pass across to someone else who can then go through the gap. That's why I'd love to see, and this is nothing against Harold Foster whatsoever, because I feel like he always has a solid enough game. But imagine someone like an Andre Esterhuizen as a 12 for the Bulls, or some big dynamic ball runner like that, a Damien Dialendi, or someone like that who can really create those attacking chances for the side. Just because maybe that's all they need. They just need that little bit more front foot ball, but of course the handling alongside that's always going to hurt. You're dropping the ball as much as they did. The Sharks found that out as well in that game, but luckily for them, they started finding the rhythm just near the end of the contest. But yeah, it's no easy fix for the Bulls at the moment, is it? And all of a sudden, to be fair, we could see them come out in a couple of weeks' time and play an incredible game of rugby. It's very hard to predict them at the moment the way that they've been playing.
hopefully, like I think if these sets of Bulls players this season and the coaching stuff and want to turn this season around, which I don't think is possible, then it starts not this weekend, next weekend. Like if you beat the Stormers in Cape Town, like that's a massive statement
Yeah.
in terms of how both seasons has gone. But our defense, I don't know. Hamish, do you know what's going on with the defense? Like, I don't know.
Well, they get them very good at missing tackles, which isn't exactly something you want to be good at in a game of rugby, but it just seems like they're not on the same page. It's actually reminded me a little bit, and once again, it seems like I'm having to go at the Sharks, but near the start of the season, and in fact, somewhere through last season as well, when the Springboks were coming back into the side, it seemed like the defence had no coherency in terms of that chemistry across their defensive line. And that's what we're seeing for the Bulls at the moment. There are so many gaps that are opening up. And let's be honest, if the Sharks, if they dropped about maybe 5 or 10 less balls, they probably would have scored 3 or 4 more tries throughout that game up against the Bulls. But then there were times when the Bulls were right on the goal line and should have scored, but didn't. And, in games that are derbies and in games that are so close, you have to be scoring points. Like looking at the whole weekend, Benetton winning by 6, Scarlets winning by 4, Leinster by 4, Stormers by 7. Those are the close games that we saw on the weekend. So you have to make sure that if you have a chance, you get that ball down, because if you don't, you're probably going to lose. And in this case, they didn't even get the bonus point from the game, the Bulls, which I think going into that contest seemed like it should have been the bare minimum goal for a side with so much potential. But it just isn't happening at the moment.
It just isn't happening, and I think that's the biggest thing. I don't know where. I think there has to be change. Like, I know if you look at it, the players stayed mostly the same. The only change was Johan Ackerman. So you're gonna look at change. You're gonna look at him, and he's gonna throw the knives out. But the buck stops with him. Like, he can blame this and that and whoever, but the buck stops with him, and that's unfortunately the problem. I think for us, if we're gonna maybe do what how England did with Borthwick, they were also in that horrendous slump and then just picked up. So I think you just change some stuff. I think you have to get people that you are not Ackerman's people in, because at this stage it's still assistant coaches of the previous regime. You have to get new people in. I think that's the thing, and then just probably stick with him and see out the season, and then we go from there. Because, like, you don't want to change the coach again, because then it's just gonna look like a clown show. Like, six
Well,
months, six
then
months
you're in this
in.
scenario. Who do you go to next if you were to just switch out your coach again?
Like Joe Smith, maybe Joe Smith, maybe he's the guy. But will he go? I think his eyes on probably the New Zealand job, and
You
I
think
don't
that's up for
know.
grabs already?
It could be after the World Cup. Like,
Maybe.
take a 2 year vacation and then after the World Cup and see. But I don't know. I don't know what coach is out there really for us, because Franco Smith just had too many demands. So I don't know who is out there really, if you look at it. Um, but yeah, it's gonna be a very interesting few couple of weeks. And the conditioning of the players, I'm also so baffled at how the conditioning, because we just can't seem to last more than 60 minutes almost.
Yep.
It's maybe even 50 minutes. We just can't seem to, again, the second half, just don't survive it.
Well, that old school mindset for the Bulls was we're going to run you off your feet in the second half. And definitely with the games being at Loftus, it used to be that stamina of the side was what won them a lot of games. But now, I don't know, it just seems to be that when it gets to that second half, maybe it comes down to depth and they haven't quite got that same level of players that they have had in the past to be able to enforce that physicality throughout the whole 80 minutes. I feel like the biggest player that they're missing at the moment is Cameron Honeycomb. But,
Mm.
he can't do it all himself when he returns, because it is getting closer. He has been named in the squad a couple of times, not as a playing option per se, but just as a getting very close to coming back. But, the amount of extra pressure that he's going to have on him to be able to come back from a long-term injury and then just change the game for the Bulls. And maybe it does only take one guy to start to find the rhythm, but Particularly that loose forward trio. There was a while there where they just didn't look beatable for the number 6, 7, and 8. That was when you had the Elric Lowe honeycomb in there, and then also, whether it was going to be Marcel Kutsia in that number 6 jersey, or at the moment it looks like they're going more towards the future, those younger options. Yandre Rudolph, I don't mind him. I learned he's 31, which I thought he was about 46 from looking at him, but he's still got a few more years up his sleeve, and he at least looks like throughout the whole 80 minutes. Yes, he makes some dumb mistakes because he's just trying to go at 1,000 miles an hour, a little bit like a Jasper Visa, but he still looks like he's trying, which I think is something. It sounds bad to say again, but something more than what we're seeing from half the Bulls out there on the field at the moment. He just looks like he's got that intent of, oh, well, I might get it wrong every once in a while, but at least I'm still there. I'm in the breakdowns. I'm trying to get something going. But there's just that lack of intent for some of these guys at the moment out there on the field.
Yeah, no. And I'm not really sure what will happen, but I think there needs to be change. I don't know what change, but I think change is needed. Because you can't be losing 5 games in a row. Like, you can maybe lose 5 games across the whole season, but not 5 in a row. You can probably add six to that if you thinking of the next game. So yeah, but let's move on then from that to the Stormers, who won with the bench, but I have to say the Lions had impressed me. I feel like if the Lions didn't get those 2 early injuries, I think this game could have been a lot closer than what it was.
Yeah, well, they've messed up the lineouts for them straight away, didn't they? And then, like, Darian Landsberg, he's a great player. And as soon as I saw him making his way off the bench, I thought, okay, this one won't be too much of a hit for them. But then when he got injured, it just gets more and more difficult. Luckily, they did, I guess, in a way, prepare for it because they did have that 6-2 split off of their bench. But the fact that they scored in the first 60 seconds of the first half, and then the Stormers, they scored within the first 60 seconds of the second half, like, there was a lot of intent there from both of the sides. And I think the Lions, I'm glad that they got 1 bonus point, but I honestly feel like they deserved 2. I thought that they would have been able to get the 4th try for that second bonus point. Stormers starting a little bit slow, but then coming out the gates firing in that second half and being able to win it with their bench. But it's a bit of a tricky one, isn't it? Because we've just gone from saying what the Bulls have been doing wrong to now praising the Stormers. And as you know, those 2 sides are playing each other next. So it is not that much easier. Lions have the Sharks. I'm so intrigued about that game, purely because of the fact that, for me at the moment, it could go either way. Yes, the Sharks are on that 2-match winning streak, but the Lions, in even their losing efforts lately, have shown some really good stuff. That game up against Newcastle, they were extremely close to being able to win it, just couldn't get that last try that they would have needed with that last-minute chance for Newcastle going their way. But I don't know, a lot of people are starting to come around to the Lions a little bit. They like the underdog status of this team, and they certainly were silencing the crowd early in Cape Town, what they were doing from the start.
I just think with the Sharks game against the Lions, I think it being in Durban will make it difficult for the Lions.
People said that when the Lions played the Bulls at Loftus.
True.
Sorry, that's a terrible
True.
example, isn't it? But
True, yeah. Terrible example, but you are correct, yeah. But I feel like the Lions in the last couple of games seems like they've turned a new page. Like, they starting to have a bit more confidence and a bit more belief. What did you make of what's his name? scrum of Lions, Morne van der Berg. What did you make of him?
Uh, Honestly, I thought it was one of his worst games in a Lions kit. It just, like, for me anyway, as soon as that change was made, it just seemed like they were on the right track. Nico Stain, he came off the bench, and straight away it just seemed like the Lions were starting to find their rhythm. But the amount of times that Morne van den Berg kicked that ball away, I don't know if it was tactical or whether it was something he was coming up with, but it pretty much got the Stormers back into the game. Throughout the first half, the Stormers hardly having any possession. That was due to the fact that the Lions, when they had the ball, they were hanging on to it and not giving the opportunity to the Stormers. But the amount of times in that second half that the Lions went, okay, we're finished with the ball, we're going to give it to you, see what they can do with the attack. And I just get the feeling like had they not done that in the second half, they probably would have won this game. But at the same time, the Stormers, they always seem like a side that can go the 80 minutes at the moment. That is why they are sitting undefeated, top of the table. But yeah, it wasn't his best game. You know, you look through, I know a lot of people aren't the biggest fan of Jaden Hendrickse in a Springbok kit, but that man made a real impact off of the bench for the Sharks. You look at what Grant Williams, what he can normally do. The 9 jersey, Cobus Reinach, he was just kind of the quiet workhorse for the Stormers throughout the game. So van den Berg, it was really what he was able to do last year that got him into the Bok picture. But now, you know, he can't have too many more performances like that or else he will drop down the pecking order for the Boks. And it's a bloody long pecking order at the moment. They've got plenty of talent in that 9 jersey.
Yeah, no, I think he had a poor game more than van der Berg. But let's see um what he what they deliver um, up against the Sharks. At least they have now a bit of a rest after such a big game. Can maybe assess the injuries. So yeah, but the Stormers winning again. Their bench carrying them through another game. I think it's their bench helped them to win against Bayonne, and now up against the Lions. So it's showing almost like Leinster, where Leinster are terrible in the first half and then just the bench carry them through. Like they're very similar at this stage, I think. Some are probably better overall looking at the season, but Leinster and the Stormers showing a bit of similarities there.
Yep.
So yeah, but well done to the Stormers. Like very impressive. But let's see. Let's see how far you beat us. It's gonna be a tough. That's gonna be a tough game for me.
Or perhaps the Bulls, they can become underdogs and really dig deep and pull off the victory. At the end of the day, that could actually be their saving grace. If they were able to beat the undefeated side in the competition, that would actually probably silence a few of the critics. You know, yes, they've had a poor start, 5 in a row, but to beat the side that's undefeated and that could win the URC, that's something, right?
Yeah, that's a big statement. Like that would probably turn our season around, I would say.
Absolutely.
Or it could be a step in the right direction, depending on how we win.
I'm going Stormers by 50. No, I'm joking. I think it will be a close game.
No. I think Stormers by just a bit more than what they did the Lions. Almost around where the Sharks beat us.
Okay, about that 9-point margin.
9 point mark, I think, around there. Probably, I think the most will probably be around 15, 16, but I wouldn't go above that, I would say. But yeah, we'll just look at a few of the other fixtures because there were a few interesting ones in round 7 of the URC. Let's have a quick look. There we go. Okay, so Cardiff lost against the Scarlets, so the Scarlets again defeating Cardiff in Cardiff for the second time. Well, twice. Yeah, second time in a row. They've won away at Cardiff. Cardiff absolutely fumbled this game. So it's the 80th minute. It's gone. The clock's in the red, and I think it's 82nd minute, and they finally breached the Scarlets' defense. And I think it was Callum Sheedy or someone puts a cross kick, and in that type of weather with that wind and stuff. Don't know why he went for a cross kick. Don't know if he thought they had advantage, but they knocked the ball, or it's a contest in the it lands on the score side, and they just kick it out. I think he knocked it on. Again, these cross kicks. I don't know what it is. Why would you cross kick when you need a try to win it? Like, so much riskier than playing it from through the hands.
Yeah, see, I'd say Saracens one though would be, in my opinion, slightly worse. Now, not because they didn't have, or because they had the advantage, but because the cross kick, normally if you're scoring off it, it's right in the corner. So for Cardiff, they would have moved up to 22 points. That kick wouldn't have mattered. But for Saracens, if they had scored in the corner, they still have to get that one over to not have it as a draw anymore. But yeah, cross kicks just seem to be a thing of the 80th minute at the moment. And to be honest, I haven't seen a lot of them actually come off. But the day that it actually does, I'm sure it's going to be a very exciting one for the side that managed to score it.
Yeah, like winning, it would have been a great winning way to score the winning try, like crossfield kick, catch it, and you go over. Like, probably a great moment, but yeah, not the best of ideas, I would say. But then Leinster, they get past Ulster, a big scare, especially after that first half. And yeah, I think Ulster, don't know what they really tried to do in the second half of the kicks, similar to the Lions, just the up and unders. I don't know if they wanted to try to control the game a bit more, and so. But what was the score at half time? 17 points. So 7 points to 7. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah,
17-7.
Ulster actually started the match really well, didn't they? In
Mm-hmm.
that contest. Half-time score was 17-7 in favour of Ulster.
Yeah, to only score 3 points in the entire game and about 14 unanswered points. That's a tough one to take it. But that lends the bench. We knew it coming into this game. 6 Irish internationals on that bench, or 5, and I think all 5 of them came on at the same time. So all 6 of them. So yeah, but Leinster, I think they on a quietly on a win streak. Leinster now, I think. Yeah, it's been a few games now. Leinster, and last they lose. Let's have a quick look. So
I think their
they
last
beat,
loss was to Munster, October 18th, in the South African Derby. And then the loss before that, here you go, bit of positivity. Bulls were able to beat them.
yeah. Yeah, so the last one was Munster, and they play Munster this weekend.
It's going to be a good one.
So, and they 5 game winning run for Leinster since then. So yeah, Benetton Zebra. I didn't watch this, but good one for Benetton. Were they any tries scored or was it? Yeah, they were. Okay, so 2 tries each. Okay, only 1 conversion. Okay, but good one for Benetton, and they done well in that situation, winning. in that game because we know Zebra can be make it difficult for teams. Um, Glasgow, Edinburgh, only a 12-point gap. Can Edinburgh do better next weekend? Oh, this weekend?
Yeah, see, it's a tricky one because we were saying last week that it had to be less than 7 or around that 7 margin, weren't we?
Yeah.
Or else then it gets a little bit more tricky. Although Edinburgh, I think that they'll be disappointed with how that match ended because, up until I believe it was the 77th minute, they were only down by, I want to say it was the 7 points, but then that next try ended up hitting. In fact, yeah, they were leading they were 19-10 down or 19-12 down at 71 minutes. And then just having that next try scored, extending that lead that little bit more for Glasgow, which is a good win for them, but that 1973 or 1873, I think it's 1873 Cup.
Yeah,
Still be up for
18.
grabs next week. Yeah, Glasgow, I think, are starting to find their rhythm. A little bit similar to Leinster, how those two sides who were near the top of the table last year, they're just going to slowly and gradually just keep on getting closer and closer to the top. Definitely if they keep on picking up victories. I know that Glasgow, after that win over Toulouse as well, that was a pretty big one for them. Their last loss was up against the Scarlets. That was 23-0 in the URC back at the end of November, but from there, they're on a 3-match winning streak. So a lot of streaks that could come to an end this weekend or perhaps continue on to 2026.
Yeah. So it's gonna be interesting. Then Ospreys against Munster. Good one for Munster. Not the best game. But yeah, good one for Munster. I think it's a massive positive for them that they were able to win away from them against Ospreys, who haven't been terrible this season. So yeah, um, Munster now, it's a good confidence boost. I think they also were able to take a few of their stars off towards the end. So yeah, it's gonna be a big clash at Munster Leinster one. I don't know when last Munster got the double over Leinster, but that could be a massive one for them. And then probably the game of the weekend, maybe Dragons 48, Connacht 28. Closer than what it was in the end, I think, because Connacht scored 3 tries in the last 15 minutes, and by then it was already 48 points to 7. So, yeah. But well done to Connacht to get a 4-try bonus point. I think that like showing that intensity and stuff to, and they know how to just know, okay, let's just push on to get those four, four, 4-try bonus point, because sometimes it just looks like teams give up, and yeah. But well done to the Dragons. That's a massive one for them. They go back-to-back wins for them. So I think the first time since 2022 for the Dragons. But they have a massive Welsh derby on their hands. They go away to Cardiff. That's gonna be a big game. That one, especially Cardiff losing to Scarlets at home. They're gonna want to rectify that result. So yeah, but I think that's really that. I don't know, but maybe do quick predictions. Just have a quick look at it all. So Cardiff Dragons. What do you have winning?
Well, the Dragons are in good form at the moment, so they're a bit of an unpredictable one, but I will say that Cardiff should win that game. And we've got to remember, Dragons have won their last 2 games at home, but then away from home, their last away game, I think they lost by about 25 points. So I'm going to go Cardiff, but it could actually be a little bit close if the Dragons go with a similar lineup and do, attack from the get-go. That's the main thing. Just try and get that chance of even a losing bonus point. We saw it for Connacht. They now sit on the same points as the Bulls on 15 points at the moment for the table. So, those bonus points are going to be the difference between making it through to the top 8 and maybe just narrowly missing out. We've seen the Lions suffer that a couple of years ago with that bonus point right in the last round that they didn't quite manage to get. So, yeah, I think Cardiff, but I think that the Dragons should at least get some form of bonus point, whether that's 4 tries or being within 7. It would be quite great to see for them.
Yeah, no, it would be. I'm hoping the Dragons win. To be honest, like it'd be good for to see them winning. But yeah, you're probably looking at a Cardiff win. Scarlets Ospreys. That's gonna be a big clash. Both sides at the bottom of the table, close. So it's gonna be a big game for both of them, especially with Scarlets beating Cardiff away from home. They will want to continue on and when continue on that good form, good momentum. So
Yeah, I think that Scarlets. In fact, I feel like in this scenario, the home sides will be feeling pretty confident almost across the board, although there are some pretty tough ones to come in terms of the away sides. But those 2 first fixtures, I think that both home sides should be able to get over the line. For the Scarlets, to be able to win that game last week would have been a huge confidence booster. Ospreys, at the moment, I would say they're bottom of the table for a reason. They don't seem to have that same edge that they had, I think it was last season when they did pretty decently, or it may have even been the season prior. So, yeah, I'll go the Scarlets for that one. But hopefully, once again, close game. We've seen a lot of the derbies just last week. Less than 7 would be great. We love a close game going down to the wire.
mm, yeah, no, yeah, it would be nice to see. Few of these games just go down to the wire. So a Zebra against Benetton, that's now a game that could go down to the wire. Also, what is this times? What are like?
It's a great
What is
question.
this?
And I have no idea why they do it like that, because surely there were other times that could have been used. Like an earlier afternoon kickoff for Zebra versus
Right.
Benetton or something like that. But it was the same last week. There were about 3 games that were all taking place at the same time, which makes it quite difficult
Mm.
to be able to follow them all. Although URC TV, little bit of a plug there, it does have the option of multi-screen viewing, but it also has the option of it completely crashing, like I've experienced a few times as well. But I think that'll be a good game, and I do think that Benetton's away record is a bit more of a concern than what we've seen maybe in some past seasons. Zebra in front of that home crowd seem to really get going, but I'll go a narrow 5-point victory for Benetton, but then at the same time, they could lose by 20. That's the type of form that they've been in away from home.
Yeah, that it's gonna be interesting. I think last season, I think they won Benetton. They won away from home and lost at home. So yeah, but it's gonna be interesting that one. We look with. I don't know. Like, surely you just move it an hour earlier. That Zebra one, just
Yeah.
just an
Yeah,
hour
we
early.
can look at it all we want, but they always seem to find a way. It's like the international rugby calendar, how there was always games that overlapped, and you thought, well, there were a whole heap of available slots the next day that they could have played the game instead. Even looking as far as that Women's World Cup final taking place at the same time as Springboks were playing Argentina. So it's like, yeah, there seems
Yeah.
like easy solutions, but I'm sure it's a lot harder for the ones up top in terms of making the choices. But, the fact that there's only 6 games as well, there's no South African sides to be able to deal with in terms of the overlap, because I think initially South Africa were going to have the early kickoff, but their kickoffs were going to be, I want to say, like 3 p.m. South African time. So that still would have overlapped. with the
Mm,
Zebra versus Benetton game. Maybe not with Edinburgh Glasgow though.
yeah. But speaking of Edinburgh, Glasgow, Edinburgh needs to win by 12 or more points, basically. I probably back them at home to make it a closer game. I don't think they win though, but it's gonna be an interesting game. I think Glasgow just sneak it.
Yeah, I'm thinking the same. I'm thinking Glasgow by about 7. Just maybe Edinburgh get close for the early stages, but then similar to what we saw up against Toulouse, I think that the Warriors will find their rhythm in that second half and start to get it firing. Although I think that Edinburgh, the rematch last year, did they manage to get themselves the win in that game?
Mm. So, but I thought that they won. Let
They
me
did
quickly.
10 points to 7 after losing 33-14 the week prior.
So, and the year before that, they won by 5 points. So
Yeah,
if they do beat Glasgow, it's not by a lot. The
yeah.
only time they did beat them by a lot was 2022 when they won 28 points to 11 at home. I think that year they probably won the cup, I want to say. 28 should have won the cup then, 2022. Because in the previous one, uh, yeah, so I think 2022 they won the cup, but since then it's been all Glasgow. So yeah, but then the two Irish clashes, Connacht against Ulster. It's gonna be a big one. Uh, Probably gonna say Ulster, but that's an interesting one. That one. I think just Ulster because they play the better rugby, almost the same.
Yeah, that one's probably got it's it's a weird game because Ulster have the ability to score a lot of tries, and Connacht have a lot of ability of conceding them. But then at the same time, there's a chance that that Ulster defence will just be able to hold them out. So for some reason, I feel like it could be quite a hard day at the office for Connacht, and we could be looking at like a 40 points to 15 kind of scoreline in favour of Ulster. But I could be completely wrong. I normally am, as you know, for my predictions. But I just feel like out of all the games of the weekend, that for me is the one-sided match if it ends up going the way that it could. And if Ulster fire back hard after just narrowly losing to Leinster,
Mm.
because that will make them angry. You know, they'll want to get a win back under the belt just before the end of the year. And who better to do it up against than another Irish side? You know, those derby rivalries always seem to bring out the best in the team, so maybe it could be Ulster's day.
Maybe it's gonna be interesting to see, especially with the amount of energy Ulster put in, if they're up to the intensity.
Yeah.
Um. So yeah, then Munster Leinster. That's gonna be a crack of a game. Um. That's such a bad time for you guys over there. What's 6 a.m.?
It's something around there. But then saying that, depending on if I cover any games prior, you see, I might be just waking up. So it's an early morning start rather than a late night finish. But I'm pretty much used to it by now in terms of terrible
Yeah.
timings of the URC games for us here in New
Yeah.
Zealand. But we still get up, we still watch as many of
Mm.
them as we can. And that one, I think, is one that people will not want to miss when those two
Yeah.
sides go head to head. Definitely because of what happened earlier on in the season when Munster were able to get themselves that massive win up against Leinster away from home as well. This time it's at Fortman Park. So they'll have that home crowd advantage. And you'd assume it would be pretty rowdy with the fact that it's taken place on the 27th of December, just after Christmas time. And, you know, it's the bragging rights right up until the next time the two sides play. Munster, like you said, it doesn't happen too often that they go 2 from 2. In fact, I can't even remember the last year that they were able to do it, but if they could, it would be huge. And the thing is, there's a lot of Irish sides near that top 8 or in that top 8 at the
Mm.
moment. Currently looking at the table and the way that it sits, you've got the way that it sits, Munster are in second, got Ulster in fifth, then Connacht are in ninth, and then Leinster are in sixth. So every Irish side inside of the top 9. There are 3 South African sides inside of the top 8. So, that doesn't leave a lot of other space. I think you've got Glasgow and then also Cardiff, the other 2 sides, relatively up there. But, Munster, if somehow, well, actually, no, it doesn't even have to happen that way. Munster, if they win that game, they will be top of the table for the end of the year. Now, of course, early on in the next calendar year, we could end up seeing the Stormers take that spot back, but just for a couple days, Munster will be on top of the world.
Yeah. Munster beat Leinster back-to-back in the 2014-15 season.
Yeah, that's been a little while. There's some sides at the moment that we're starting to get towards that stage of the season, how these games are must-wins, because they will be the difference between going through to the next stage and missing out. I feel like this year, the real battle's happening between about 7 and 11. Those are the teams that could all fight for that top 8 spot. Last year, I feel like it was a lot wider. There were about 6 or 7 sides all fighting for that top 8. But this year, it's been narrowed down a little bit due to some lower sides' bad form. And, if they start winning those games, they also go up, have a bit of a chance too. But we'll wait and see. Exciting games this weekend.
Yeah, it's going to be exciting. But we'll wrap it up on that then. So, yeah. But thank you, Amish, for coming on. And, yeah, let the people know where they can find you.
So, on the TheKiwiLads YouTube channel, I didn't end up doing a Christmas stream, unfortunately, but we will hopefully be live for one of these games throughout the weekend. I would say Munster-Leinster looks the most likely. I'll have to set an alarm because or else I will sleep right through, unfortunately. But it's definitely a game that you don't want to miss.
So, yeah, goes to proud team. And then, yeah, I'm going to be doing AFCON stuff. And then probably Friday, which game? The Scarlets game. I'm probably gonna do that one, as well as I will see with the Leinster Monster one how things look. So yeah, but thank you guys for watching. Do make sure to like and subscribe, and then we'll see you all on the next one. Cheers.